Dated on West Coast time, it's 12:56 p.m. It is June 15th, 2023. Dear Reverend Popham, my name is John Weaver from Rosamond, California. Yeah, I'm a Christian Methodist. I've been following regarding the situation that the Southern Baptists had considered. I have to have a confession at this point, Rev, that it left me pissed. Forgive my language. I was raised a Methodist, but basically I'm supposed to be raised a Christian. A Methodist is the organization and the type of religion that we try to put ourselves into, and we're not supposed to be judgmental about a lot of things, but I hate to say it, but I have been a great deal. Calling a God is important to a lot of people, especially when they get it, and He wants specific people to take on specific challenges to show or to teach us something we're totally blind and ignorant and deaf to. We got our own three monkeys to deal with. We're blind to it, we're dumb to it, also with our tongues deaf. We cannot see it. Well, worse than what Christ had said in his sermons about having a log in our eyes, and not to mention cotton in our ears and our brains being of cotton itself, not absorbing, but just there. So really not answering a lot of things. And yes, I was angry because I didn't agree with what their decision was. In my own biased, angry position at this point over here, angry at the medievalism that they've been showing and the Cro-Magnon style actions that they were taking. I said a heck of a lot of ugly things on the videos I've been doing on YouTube at this point, Rev. The thing of it is, they're my own cannon shots into them at this point. Christ had said in the Sermon on the Mount, didn't he, concerning about, no, I'll take that back, the Garden of Gethsemane. And he was trying to tell, I think, Paul, who had the weapon, those who live by the sword shall die by the sword. And it's concerning which particular type of weapon we're talking about, Reverend. Besides the physical bladed or the metal pellet, it's also what comes out of our heart and through our mouths and our minds through our mouths, or what we put into writing. Even those could be used as weapons. And sometimes, Reverend, they can be scary as hell. Even to the ones who generated it, once they start getting, second thoughts about it. Yeah. I don't knock against women being in the ministry. If this is what God's chosen, fine, but I acted like I was a pious man acting upon everything else, but I was just totally ticked off the whole situation, and I expected people to understand it better. You think that they were tired, I think it was the ego. The medieval thought a long time ago that men was supposed to be, and the women were supposed to be below, unless they were trying to struggle for survival left and right and had to do whatever they could for survival. But if the men were there to provide, then why is the women there to be? Think about that one there. I was raised under one woman. Let me show you something, Rev. Yeah, that's resting place. 10 years Ma, 5 years big brother, Dave. Yeah, tight family. 57 years old, and I hadn't been away from my family except now. It hurts. I grieve like crazy. My channel on YouTube is The Diary of the Griever named John Weaver. And I talked for about a few years concerning about my mental status, even during the COVID nightmare from hell. I think that's when it started. And how I'm dealing with my mental health, with my mourning, and with politics and anything else, that if I am not consumed with my own grief and chained down with my sorrow and mourning, I'm actually able to function and speak clearly enough, I do. And when I see injustice like what I've seen already, I keep wondering, was this God's will? The reasons why I put up the fiery video links that, forgive me for sending over to you, but I wanted hopefully for you to understand, I'm not an angry, vengeful man where I'm going after people left and right and wanted to do some dastardly things to them. It's not my nature. My nature had been changed a long time ago. I was an isolationist at times and tried to deal with my family as best as I could, love them as great as I can, and then realized when I lost them all, and the weight of the guilt. So now I figure my penance is going to be mourning like crazy and grieving like crazy. I keep praying to God for His will to be done, not mine. But I see sometimes the injustice comes, and I see it being broadcasted, advertised, and then I feel like I have to respond. Worse than responding to a mosquito itch. Instead of just scratching at the damn surface, I'm going to be chewing on my bones on this one, trying to get rid of that damn itch. But I'm seeing injustice done. I'm trying not to act in the capacity of thinking like I know better, and I don't know any better. I don't. But I had to say something concerning about the women pastors being up there, because I think they got an absolute right. Right? Instilled by God. I mean, if He's calling women to do this kind of situation, who are we to argue? Part of the basis of my angry videos. I finally saw on MSNBC when Katie Tur was talking to you, or was that Chris? No, actually Chris Jennings, actually. We're talking to you specifically concerning about the vote at Louis, down in that state there. I couldn't believe how medieval their thinking was. Reverend, you probably hadn't, maybe you had been experienced to maybe English literature or English mysteries when you were watching PBS maybe a long time ago. Mystery shows back in the 80s and 90s. There was a series called Cadfile, written by a lady named of Ellis Peters, who wrote a book series, and then they turned it into a mini TV series out in Britain. And it was about a medieval monk, 1100s, dealing with England going through political strife, and he's a Benedictine monk, doing God's work in a monastery, but also being a crime solver, solving murders, basically. He was a herbalist, according to the characterization of him, played by Derek Jacobi. It was a wonderful series. I mean, if you want to look at it on YouTube and type out Cadfile, Cadfael. I watched this. I've read this. I've also studied a little English history a long time ago, and how the thought patterns were back then. Yeah. Same patterns I've seen being broadcasted in this organized entity that's supposed to help guide you folks, but instead rules you folks. It's like, oh my God, where do you people come from? Cro-Magnon days? Or at best, medieval times? I'm not talking about the feasting and jousting restaurant. I'm talking about ancient days of those days there. Yeah, I'm 57 years old, and I screwed up in college a long time ago, but I came back as an adult trying just to get a simple AA degree, but I'm learning more and more things in a community college, taking several years, 2 classes at a time. And I'll tell you, absorbing absorbing a great deal, living nearly a whole life, and then applying it to academia at this point over here, it makes me more and more agreeable. And sometimes in the Bible, when somewhere it said in the reigns that we increase the knowledge, but we're also increasing sorrow because we get to realize just how screwed up humanity was in the first place. But God didn't do it. Our own free will did this to us. Our misinterpretations, I think, in our own way of how we're trying to interpret God, it's supposed to be for the best of us, and we're doing it to the worst of us. I believe our own egos are in control at this point. I have to keep praying for humility and humbleness. And I am perfect. There's no way in hell I am perfect. And I'm not setting myself above anything else, and not even above God. I mean, I'm like, no, I don't. I don't do that to boss man at this point. I don't do that to him. And the thing of it is, I don't want to do that to him. I sure don't want to do anything else that might cause a lot of harm. But these days, that's a little bit crazy. So I just wanted to give out a letter of support, a video letter, an explanation of how I feel about the whole situation. And I beg your forgiveness and ask your indulgence on this one here. I support you guys. I was raised not a Baptist. I tried Baptist. My family tried Baptist. We couldn't understand the Baptist at this point over here. We go into the Methodist, First United Methodist Church of North Hollywood. Dr. Long was the pastor back in the 70s. And then it was Reverend John Nagel. And then after that, Pastor Joey. And now I don't know who was there because I hadn't been there in a long time. The church politics had gotten so screwed up, I just decided I wasn't dealing with it anymore. And geography plays a difference, especially when you move from place to place. So. But that church is still in my home and here. And the teachings I got are still in here and in here. I just haven't memorized the Bible, though. But some of the lessons I've been growing up under. One little small thing. Please tell me that you've heard of Reverend Robert Harold Schuler of Hour and Power a long time ago. You probably have. I hope so. My grandmother, my aunt, my mother, and I would be watching that thing like crazy. My brother would be in the military. He spent a few years in the Navy while my elderly ladies were living. And I was doing caregiving for both of them. We'd watch the Hour of Power. Get sermons every single week. Get a write-in every single week. 2 or 3 weeks later, we get the printed pamphlets. And sometimes when we throw in a donation or two, you get a trinket or two. Christmas trinkets were the best ones. Fell in love with those things. Lost. And it was the messages and the books I was reading of what he was trying to interpret, including from Norman Vincent Peale. They were talking about power of positive thinking during those days. And I needed a lot of it while I was growing up as a kid, to a teenager, to a screwed up adult. Because they were trying to teach us. There was even the one where Schuler did it on the Sermon on the Mount. Be happy you are loved, and he was doing it on what Jesus was talking to us about. It's the Be Happy Attitudes, I think the book was called. And I could compare the notes from the old King James I had to the notes that he had in his books. I think he was more in tune with Jesus than anybody else. I kind of think, but he was non-denominational. Except if you're a Christian, that was it. You weren't classified as anything else. You weren't classified as a Baptist, Lutheran, uh, Methodist, Catholic. And I had a lot of respect for the guy. A long time ago. I don't have the respect for theoretical church elders who push their egotistical values on people. You should be, and you must be, a pastor to be a minister to those. If this is what God called you to do and be, please continue to do so, Rev. I wish I could have heard some of your sermons. Anyway, I thought I'd give my 2 copper pennies into this. Sorry, I'm all out of silver these days. Anyway, thanks for listening, Rev. I'll be praying for you guys. And I pray that God walk with you every single step of the way. And Jesus be leading you by the hand. And from everything to anything and beyond. God be with you, Rev.